Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Cade, and for today's episode, I'm joined by two guests. First, we have a returning guest. We have my dad, Rich, and we also have a brand new guest for the channel, and that is my stepmom, Jenny. And for today's episode, we are going to be discussing all of our favorite movies from the 1980s. Hey Dad, welcome back.
How you doing?
Hey Jenny, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Cade.
Absolutely. Before we get into the top 10 movies that we picked for this list, first we're going to be going through our honorable mentions. And this isn't going to be a ranking just for everybody watching. This is just going to be us going through the movies by year. And to start off, we have The Terminator from 1984. Dad, what's your experience like with this movie?
It's great, and for the time, the effects were just amazing. It was ahead of its time. It was like a game changer for special effects and things like that for the time.
I think the funny thing about The Terminator, with this movie, do you consider it to be James Cameron's best movie? Because if you look at the other movies he's had, apart from his Avatar movies, there's Terminator 2, there's Aliens, there's Titanic, True Lies with Arnold and Jamie Lee Curtis also. He even did a movie called The Abyss. And, he's definitely made a lot of critically acclaimed movies over the years. But, from a directing standpoint, do you think it's his most well-directed movie?
Probably, because a lot of those other movies were really good. The Abyss was long and very slow and kind of a draggy movie. The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie was hilarious. That was True Lies, you just said? Yeah,
yep.
That movie was actually fun.
I liked that.
That was a really fun movie. That was light for him.
And it's funny because Titanic is the movie that he won Best Director for, and it also won Best Picture. And do you think that that's a close competitor for Terminator, though?
Yes, but he would have never had the opportunity to do Titanic if the other movies weren't done. That's the other piece on that, in my opinion.
Well, the thing about Terminator, it works so well as a lot of different genres. It's a great sci-fi film. It's a great action film. It's also, at times, I think it works kind of well as a romance story, too, when you have Sarah and Kyle Reese and how they eventually lead to the creation of John Connor.
Yep.
But moving on from that, now we're going to 1985. We have The Breakfast Club. What are your thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, so I think it was, resonated with everyone, right? Each character you could identify with, right? There was someone in there in detention that you could identify with. I personally liked Allison.
Was it a movie that ever resonated with you, Dad?
Just to jump on top of what Jen was just saying, I think it was that there was all factions of the hierarchy in high school. You had your geek, you had your jock, you had your
criminal.
Yeah, you had your tough guy. I was going to use tough guy.
You also had your wallflower character and your popular character too.
Yeah, and then they were all crammed together for a Saturday detention. Let's see what happens.
Well, and here's the thing: when you compare this movie to some of the others, which we'll eventually get to in the honorable mentions and in our top 10. The odd thing is that when you look at some of the other teen movies, part of why I like this better is I actually like the characters in it a little bit more. I honestly think she gets more to do as an actor in this movie, which I like. And I think Anthony Michael Hall is actually really great in this movie too. That scene where he's talking about how he's never gotten an F before and he was considering killing himself. I think he's really, really great in that scene actually. And I think it shows how much range he has as an actor too.
This movie allowed them to show their true talent with acting.
And I think that everybody saw themselves in one of the characters, I think.
Yes.
I think that's the key.
I honestly think Bender is probably my favorite character. He probably brought the most energy to the movie. So he's always a part of the movie that I always enjoyed. But moving on from that, now we're going to 1986. We have Aliens, another James Cameron movie. So do you guys remember what it was like when you saw this movie in theaters?
As far as sequels goes, generally they aren't as good as the first.
With a few exceptions.
With a few exceptions. And this, I think, ends up being one of the ones that probably from a review standpoint, this movie, I believe, did much better review-wise than the first one. The first one was way more like lower budget film, and I think with this movie they really opened it up, and it wasn't as
claustrophobic.
Yeah, but the first one was like grittier, and it almost was like single person perspective through the whole thing with Sigourney and stuff like that, whereas this one seemed just like you could tell there was a much bigger budget.
Well, the thing is though, it doesn't repeat the same formula of the first movie, because that's I think an issue that plagues a lot of sequels. It's kind of just the same movie again.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
But the cool thing about Aliens, it's a totally different movie from Alien, and that's what I respect about it, because look at the first Alien. Like, both are sci-fi films, but the first one is a lot more of a horror movie. This one is more action film, and just because it's a different genre doesn't automatically mean it's better. But what's cool is you have James Cameron's direction, you have his writing, and you still have Sigourney Weaver, who in my opinion is one of the best things about the franchise. I always love Sigourney Weaver in these movies, and I think that's part of what makes it good. And you also have the new characters, like the Marine Corps characters. You have the child, Newt, and the cast is also pretty good. I mean, you got Bill Paxton in this movie, and he's really great. You know, it's a sequel that, in my opinion, it doesn't feel like it was made just for money.
And it stands on its own. It holds up well.
You don't necessarily need to see the first movie to see this.
Right. And
No.
I liked it had a female lead, right? She was an action-packed hero kind of character.
And part of what worked, she's not indestructible. You know, that's not what Ripley is. You know, she has a personality. She cares about the people around her. She's probably the most level-headed person in the group, too. And I think that's part of what makes her a rootable character.
Definitely.
And actually, what I find interesting about this movie is after James Cameron made Terminator, like that's the movie that got him the job for this movie, because the first one was directed by Ridley Scott. And for anyone who doesn't know, Ridley Scott, he's known for making movies like Blade Runner, Gladiator, Thelma and Louise, and a bunch more. He couldn't come back for this movie, so they hired James Cameron. But the funny thing is, everyone that he worked with on Terminator said to him, absolutely don't do this film. If it's good, Ridley's probably going to get most of the credit because, you know, it was his original vision. But if it's bad, it's all going to be on you. There's no upside here. But he said to them all, you know what, you're probably right, but I just dig it. I just want to do it. And I'm glad he did because it really paid off.
No, for the time, it was a really good sci-fi action movie.
Yeah, exactly. But staying in the same year, 1986, we now have Pretty in Pink. Jenny, do you want to talk about this movie first?
Sure. I think I'm the only fan in the room. Well, not true. Not true. Rich, you enjoy this movie too. I think this is quintessential 1980s. Every girl wanted to be Andy. She was cool. She was hip. You know, she worked in a record store. She dressed amazingly, right? She had that pink Carmen Gia. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Rich.
I'm a vintage Volkswagen enthusiast, and the 1959 Carmen Ghia that Andy drove in the movie, I had a 58. I'm very familiar with the cars, and it makes it a little bit of an extra draw for me just to see something cool like that as a sign of the times.
This was actually a movie I had not seen until we were prepping to do this episode, and I finally got the chance to watch it for the first time. I'll say that I think the movie's decent. You know, I think the acting's pretty good overall. Andrew McCarthy, Molly Ringwald, John Cryer, and I don't know if you guys agree, but for me, I think John Cryer's probably the best actor in the movie. I think he definitely brings the most energy. That scene where someone bumps into him and he goes, yo man, next time I'll kick your ass. He's definitely, I think, the funniest, and I definitely like his character. My biggest issue with this movie, and I know this won't be an issue for you guys, is that I think the formula is very predictable. At the end, when she ends up with Andrew McCarthy, I kind of figured that's what was going to happen in the first 10 minutes, and I'm sure that's probably what the point was. You know, it wasn't meant to be a very in-between type of story. It was, you kind of figured right from the beginning it was going to be him.
But that wasn't the story. The story, well, it was, but the story was about the girl on the other side of the tracks dating the guy who was the well-off rich kid. Nobody thought that those two worlds could be together. But meanwhile, the side story is that John Cryer's character is also infatuated with Molly Ringwald. So he's her best friend, but he also is, you know, loves her to death, but she likes someone else. And he's still trying to help her be happy, even though he cares about her. That's the big piece of the story.
It was heartbreak.
Yeah.
It really was, you know, about having your heart broken and being in love with someone who isn't getting it, right? She was his best friend. That's how she looked at him. And, you know, she wasn't looking at him as, you know, a love interest. And then Blaine comes along, right? And ruins everything. But
yeah, that's the whole piece with that movie, and the fact that even though his heart is breaking, he's still trying to help her be happy. That's the crux of it all, and the part that makes it full of teenage angst. And that's, you know, those were popular movies in the 80s.
But there's also the relationship with her father. He can't give her what she wants, right? She doesn't have a mother in her life.
He wasn't well. And her father was played by Harry Dean Stanton, who is a phenomenal character actor for the time.
And I think that scene when she's telling him, you know, she's not coming back, I really do like that scene. I think they both really shined as actors in that moment. But jumping ahead to 1987, now we have The Lost Boys. Yeah, this is another movie I saw very recently that I hadn't seen before, just never gotten around to it. I gotta say, I think this might actually be one of my favorite vampire movies. I think it's written pretty well. You know, Kiefer Sutherland's great in it. I mean, everybody's great in it. And I love the fact that it has Corey Feldman in it. Corey Feldman really was, I mean, you guys have a better idea of this than I do. He really was one of the top kid and teen actors of the 80s.
He and Corey Haim, absolutely.
Yes, the
Yeah.
Coreys, exactly.
The Coreys, they were very popular, and the cast in this movie is fantastic. I mean, between Kiefer, Jason Patrick, Jamie Gertz, Diane Weist,
Weist,
great,
sorry.
Weist, great actor. You know, the cast was all star, and the problem is like probably today people would probably think they're 80s cheesy, but for someone who was lived in the 80s, they were cool vampires.
It answered that. They were kind of gritty
Yeah,
bad boys, right? And that fed to that, you know, the costumes, right? The
Yeah,
clothing.
but leading up to that, vampire movies, they were either campy, you know, let's kill Dracula kind of movies, and what year did this movie come out?
1987.
Teen
Okay, so
driven.
87. So even when George Hamilton played in Love at First Bite, that was a comedy. You know, they either made vampires comedic or they were super campy and weird. This made vampires cool.
Well, and the other thing that's really nice about this movie is that they don't shove a bunch of mythology down our throats. The movie basically just says, you know what, fuck it, they're vampires, deal with it. And the thing is, though, it's nice because it basically trusts the audience. Like, it pretty much says, you know what, they know what vampires are, so we'll just go with it. And you know what's unfortunate, though, with this movie? So the director of this is Joel Schumacher, who most famously directed Batman Forever and Batman Robin.
The two worst Batman movies ever made, yes.
Well, but here's the thing, though. He's also got other movies like Falling Down with Michael Douglas.
Oh, I love Falling Down.
He's got Phone Booth with Colin Farrell,
Which was a good movie.
He's also got A Time to Kill. He even directed Phantom of the Opera with Gerard Butler. And, you know, it's a shame that those Batman movies are what he's most known for. Because apart from that, I would say, you know, outside of those movies, he's actually a pretty good director, I think.
I think it's because there's the before Batman and there's the after Batman for him. You know what I mean?
But now that we've gone through all our honorable mentions, now we're finally getting into our top 10. And to start this off, we're going back to 1981. We have Raiders of the Lost Ark. And, you know, I obviously wasn't around during this time, but back when this movie came out, how big was it?
It was like going to Star Wars.
Really?
Right, definitely.
It definitely was, because you know why? Because the this was another one with all of the special effects and and the setting and the money spent on this movie. It was amazing. All the effects, it was like this immersive experience watching this movie, because there was just so much going on, and all of the, you know, they did such a good job with it, and Harrison Ford was fantastic.
And there was something for everyone because there was a romance.
Love interest was Karen Allen, right?
Yeah, she
Yes.
played Marion Ravenwood.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think Marion is one of the better love interest characters. The reason why is because she's not just a love interest. She's an actual character that matters in the movie. You know, she has that medallion that plays a part. She's able to handle herself against what's going on, and that's kind of nice. And her whole character doesn't revolve around her relationship with Indy. And also, Karen Allen, she's really great in the role, too. And I really love her chemistry with Harrison Ford.
Definitely. They had great chemistry.
It was really good.
You believed it.
But you also have a bunch of the other characters in the movie. Like, you have Indy's friend Sala, and he's kind of a fun character. There's the villain Belloc, who's a pretty good villain. He's essentially the evil Indiana Jones. And I think the story itself is also pretty good. Searching for the Ark of the Covenant, that's pretty good too. You know, like you were saying, it was impressive, all the effects and everything, but it's a movie I appreciate because it's also got a lot of imagination to it too. And actually, here's what I find really interesting about this movie. The whole reason that this movie even exists is because Steven Spielberg was denied the opportunity to direct a James Bond movie. It was after he did Jaws. He approached the producers of the James Bond franchise and they turned him down because they thought he wasn't experienced enough. And then he eventually approached them again about it, but they turned him down again because they thought he'd be too expensive. So eventually, he and George Lucas, who had been working on the idea, decided, you know what, let's just create our own action adventure hero. And that's exactly what they did. And I'm glad that they did.
Well, story was good too. I mean, if I remember right, it was all like World War II kind of setting, and all of that was going on in the background as well. So instead of just having a movie, it gave you a whole world to kind of jump into and see and be part of. That was probably the most fun about it. Is it gave you an experience. It wasn't just, you know, a time kill.
Harrison Ford brings a certain type of presence on screen. He can be funny, he can be charming, he can be a lot of things, and he's a very rootable actor, I think.
Absolutely. He's got that little smirk he had sex appeal. He was an action hero, and seriously, that's why women were not going to an adventure movie, right? They weren't going to action adventure. They were going to see Harrison Ford. So, you know, that's what sold tickets for sure.
But with this movie, when you guys saw it, did you ever think, yeah, this could be a franchise? Or did you think it was just meant to be a standalone?
I think when we were young, there weren't franchises. There weren't a ton of sequel movies.
Well, Star Wars.
Yeah, but that was still like its infancy. of movies with tons of sequels.
I guess James Bond was around though.
Yeah, but that was like it wasn't. That was like I've always felt like James Bonds were a continual, ongoing story. It wasn't standalone in sequels. It just was like a story. To me, James Bond movies, that is like a chapter of the book for me, at least when I think of James Bond. I don't think of the movies as standalones. I think of it as mission to mission to mission.
And that's kind of what the Indiana Jones franchise is, though. Each movie is a standalone story. I think that's what's nice about it, because you don't really need to watch the franchise in order. You can just watch it however you want to. So that's what's kind of nice about it. But sticking in 1981, now we are talking about the next movie on our list, one of Dad's all-time favorites. We have Escape from New York. Dad, go ahead. What's this movie mean to you?
What's this mean? Look, Sign of the Times, it was basically Escape from New York was a dystopian look at the prison structure in a world of chaos. That, I think, is like the one sentence way to kind of break out the whole movie. The movie introduces you to one of the coolest characters in the history of movie making. Kurt Russell is Snake Plissken. So, but
Did I say that out loud?
But so what happens is, at the beginning of the movie, the President of the United States plane crashes into the city as it was hijacked, and the President is in the city with a tape that is supposed to save the world because the world is in chaos. Snake's job is to go in and get him out, get the President out, and basically save the world from chaos. You get introduced to Kurt Russell's character. He was known as a Disney actor. They'd never seen him, in a, more gritty, raw character. He has to go in and he has to fight his way, save the president, get out of New York alive in 24 hours. You're introduced to a phenomenal cast of characters. Harry Dean Stanton, again, we were just talking about him in Pretty in Pink, great character actor. John Carpenter's wife at the time, Adrienne Barbeau, is in the movie. Ernest Borgnine, Isaac Hayes, king of R&B for the 70s. It's just a great movie as far as all of that goes. And if you love action adventure, and Kurt Russell's best line in probably every movie is everyone looks at him and goes, Snake Plissken, huh? I thought you were dead. Every character in that movie that meets Snake says that to him. It's hilarious. And one of the other best, just call me Snake.
I mean, I understand why a lot of people like it. It's impressive considering that they didn't have a very big budget for this movie. The budget was actually fairly small, and they were still able to pull off a lot. For anyone who might not know, a lot of this movie wasn't even shot in New York City because, they couldn't really afford it. And they just found this town that was basically abandoned, and they used that to film most of their scenes. So I appreciate that. And in terms of John Carpenter, if you look at his work on this movie, one of the best things is probably his score. And, I think it's probably, I don't know if I want to say it's his best score. It's definitely one of his coolest scores, I think. But the thing is, though, as an action movie, it works pretty well. As a movie, though, it's still a movie that I don't think is as good as something like Raiders of the Lost Ark. In terms of the characters, I don't find them as fun to follow. Snake, he's entertaining. He feels more like an exaggeration rather than a real character, because he tries to make every word that comes out of his mouth sound like the coolest thing that anyone has ever said. When they say, the president's been kidnapped. President of what? Or when they tell him, Mr. Plissken, he goes, call me Snake. Or when they actually do call him Snake, he goes, the name's Plissken. I get that it's trying to be cool, but at times it feels like they're trying too hard.
That's the point.
That's the point?
The point is to be Snake is a walking exaggeration. He's a walking, talking exaggeration the whole time.
Well, and the thing is, one thing that's not memorable, though, is the villain, the Duke of New York. I can't tell you anything about this guy. I can't tell you his personality. I can't tell you his goals. I can't tell you anything. He's just the top dog at this prison, and he's not really a very interesting or memorable villain. He's kind of just another prisoner there, and that's the problem, though. Most of the villains in this, aka the prisoners, are all kind of just the same person.
It's an exaggerated joke.
That's the thing, though. It makes them less memorable.
Really? Isaac Hayes, every time Snake walks onto the screen, his eye starts twitching.
Okay.
Because it's supposed to. He's the coolest dude. He pulls up in the huge Cadillac. He was the walking exaggeration of stereotype for the time. He had the hydraulic Cadillac with chandeliers hanging from the front fenders. The guy with the big, huge hair, whose name I can't remember. That was, in the beginning of the movie when Snake, the guys go in after the president's pulled away, and he runs up to him and he's like, you get in the air for 60 seconds or he dies. The guy was crazy, and it was so good. It was so good. It was a weird take on what could possibly happen in the future.
Here's the problem, though. If you compare the Duke of New York to other villains from the 1980s, like Hans Gruber from Die Hard or Bellick from Heirs, I can't really say that he's really that interesting or memorable because he doesn't really have too much to do. If you go back and look, the Duke of New York doesn't really have that many scenes in the movie.
He
And,
doesn't.
Like,
The only time you remember is when Donald Pleasance is blowing him away, going, "Hey, you're the Duke of New York, a number one," and blowing him up with the machine gun. That's what you remember because it was hilarious.
The funny thing is that when it comes to the character Cadby, a lot of people have wondered, like I've seen theories online, like why is he in there in the first place? And one theory I've seen for a while is maybe he's just always been there. You know, even when the prison was first built, maybe he's just been there the whole time.
He just stayed.
Yeah.
He just stayed because he was from New York.
Because, yeah, he's probably, of all of them, he's probably the last person you would expect to be a criminal, probably.
Yeah, and I mean, and it was funny because it was such a simple character because his character basically told Snake the rules for New York, basically. As he was there, he's getting there, he jumps in the car and then, "Oh, Snake, you don't want to go over there. Oh, Snake, you don't want to do that."
And he's probably the best side character of them all, probably. I don't really care about Brain or Maggie that much.
No, I mean, Brain, that was just he knew Snake. Snake's like, "Hey, man, you sold me out."
And that's pretty much as deep as it gets.
Yeah, it was, "Hey, you sold me out." You don't really find out why you sold him out or whatever, and then he's like, "I'm doing well here, the Duke lets me do what I want."
Well, now that we've talked about Escape from New York, now we're going to 1983. Now we have Scarface. And Jenny, I know that you have something to say about this movie, so go ahead.
Sure, let's go to Miami, right? From New York to Miami. This movie, it's the struggle of Tony Montana, right? The filming, the costumes, the characters.
And I know that you're not really an Al Pacino fan, but with that being said, would you consider this to be one of his best performances of all time?
I would, because he was Tony Montana. Like, I don't think anyone could ever play that role.
And the thing is, part of what I love about Pacino, he usually brings a certain level of energy to the roles that he plays, even as Michael Corleone in the Godfather movies, The Devil's Advocate, which he's also just awesome in that movie too. Even when he's not being super wacky and energetic, even when he's just very calm, he's a guy who can really command a room and just steal the scene that he's in. And I really respect him as an actor in that way.
No, I do agree with that. I do.
And then everything is so exaggerated and crazy, and he meets the girl that he wants to be with, and then everything just goes to crazy excess.
I gotta say, I think Michelle Pfeiffer is also pretty good in this movie. And she was actually really young when she did this. She was only like 24 when she made this movie, or 20.
And I think it was like her first real acting gig.
Probably her biggest role, at least at
Yeah.
the time. And she's really great in the movie too. The way that her and Al Pacino were just arguing 24/7. They're both really good together. Come to think of it, here's something about Scarface that I find really interesting. It's a remake of a movie from the 80s.
Yes.
Do you think it can prove that remakes can be done well?
I like the fact that obviously the original was 1932. Obviously they took the plot in a different direction, right? The characters are totally different, reinvented it. And that's what I like about remakes. I want them to be completely reinvented.
Yeah, don't try to follow the story, the original story, because you can't, because the times changed the story. I mean, the fact that they did it the way they did, and it was it was sign of the times in a remake.
It's also the movie that gave us arguably one of the greatest lines in the history of cinema. "Say hello to my little friend." Which
That's been used multiple times, multiple movies.
And you know what's funny about Al Pacino? So with Scarface is often considered, one of the greatest crime films ever made. And some people might say one of the greatest movies of all time. People say the same thing about The Godfather 1 and 2. Well, if you look at Al Pacino, he's been in some of the greatest movies ever made and some of the worst movies ever made. Because if you look at some of the later movies like Geely with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, or Jack and Jill with Adam Sandler. I mean, again, he's been in some of the greatest and some of the worst films of all time. And I think that makes him kind of a legend, to be honest.
Well, also lets you know that he's not afraid to take a risk.
And to his credit, he's the best thing about Geely. When he shows up in that one scene, he's probably the best thing about the movie. And I think that just really shows what a great actor he is in general. So yeah, I think he'll always be a legend and he'll always be an icon. But moving on from Scarface, now we're going to 1984. We have 16 Candles. My question is, do you guys remember seeing this in the theater for the first time back when it came out?
I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on a VHS tape.
Yeah, remember those, everybody?
which was new technology at that time. And this is, this movie definitely, again, like Pretty in Pink, resonated with girls my age, right? We all wanted to be that, angst-ridden. We were angst-ridden Samantha, right? We could really relate to her.
And all the girls wanted tall, dark, and handsome guy with the Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another movie with Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall. And
Yes, Brat Pack.
And I gotta say, just like what I said with John Cryer in Pretty in Pink, I think Anthony Michael Hall, the best actor in the movie, in my opinion. It's something about those sort of dorky, nerdy characters. Is it me or did they have the best material in those movies? Because it seems like they got the funniest lines.
They got the best lines, definitely.
The
Absolutely.
Weaves.
I mean, I don't think it's as good as Breakfast Club, but that's just my 2 cents. I like the characters in Breakfast Club a lot better, but
I
that's just
think
me.
2 totally different movies.
No, because The Breakfast Club, I didn't feel like The Breakfast Club was as comedic as this movie. There was lots of comedy in this movie as well. I mean, you had Long Duck Dong running around the whole time. All this crazy stuff during the movie. It was funny. It was funny. You had brooding angst from the girl. You had the comedy. You had Anthony Michael Hall. There was all this fun, joking stuff,
Campy.
kind of campy, all happening at the same time. It was a fun movie.
And it was maybe making you more comfortable if you were that awkward kid, or if you were that angsty, teenage girl who didn't want to be in her sister's wedding and didn't care about her sister's wedding and just wanted to, meet her Prince Charming, right? I think it brought attention, but like a comfort level to being invisible or insecure, right? Not everyone in school is popular. No one has the same social life. It kind of highlighted everyone, portrayed everyone in school.
The thing is, though, for me, some of the comedy in this movie is just really, really repetitive. And this especially goes for someone like Long Duck Dong. Every time he shows up on screen, he makes a joke and then we hear a gong. And I get what they're going for, but it happens over and over and over and over again. Okay, I get it. It just felt very rinse and repeat. So that's just my biggest issue with the movie.
I just think that was 80s comedy in general.
Yep.
But I think, the 2 iconic scenes are when she walks out and there's Jake, right, waiting for her, but then the birthday cake. Every girl, that's like their scene, right? The birthday.
Well, and for it to make the top 10, do you guys think it still holds up to this day from a story perspective?
I do.
Absolutely. You could easily modernize that and set it in today's situation.
Because if you look at some of the other movies we've talked about, Raiders still holds up really well. I think Alien still holds up incredibly well, along with Terminator. And I might not be as big a fan of it, but I do think 16 Candles does still hold up. It's a movie that anyone can watch, and I'm sure anyone can have fun with it.
Definitely.
But moving on from 16 Candles, now we're going to 1985. We're going to be talking about The Goonies. Jenny, I know that you're not as much of a fan of this movie as Dad and I are, but even though you're not as big of a fan, do you consider it a bad movie?
I don't consider it a bad movie. The concept of it and the plot of it don't interest me.
I understand. Dad, does The Goonies still hold up to this day?
I don't know if you made that movie today, it would be as good. I think it would be, this movie would be on like Nickelodeon or streaming services like Netflix or Prime or something like that. It wouldn't be a big box office movie.
Well, and you know what's awesome? The characters in this movie are pretty entertaining.
No, they all were. And you had, Josh Brolin as a kid. It's kind of hilarious to think about how long he's been an actor.
Well, and that's the thing about this movie. When you look at him and the other kids, the teenage characters, what's nice is you have teenage characters that are actually played by teenagers. If you look at this movie and you look at something like Grease, this movie just shows how fake the other one is, if you think about it.
Yeah, look, it's rough watching 35-year-olds play 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds. It's pretty rough. The cool part about this is what you're referencing is totally correct. They were kids playing kids.
And the nice thing is, though, because even with some of the other characters like Beta, who's probably one of the best characters, but also Chunk, in my opinion, all these kids could have been really annoying really easily if not handled properly. They all brought so much life to the characters and they're all written pretty well, and they're not all the same person. I think that's an issue with some kid movies. A lot of the characters sometimes feel like the same person, but with this, they're all different, and that's what makes them stand out more, which is what I appreciate.
Which I think was the key to all these 80s movies, is that they grabbed a character from each thing. You had your nerd, you had your fat kid, you had your guy who had health issues with his little inhaler.
You had your loudmouth character.
You had the loudmouth. You had kind of everybody, so there was a character for everybody watching it to kind of attach themselves to as you go through the story.
You even had your big brother character, which is what Josh Brolin's character was.
Yep.
And I'm sure he was a character that people could relate to, too.
Yeah, but with that, the thing that I think that gets missed with all the movie is all of the special effect. All of the the underground stuff and all the things as they're going after One-Eyed Willie's treasure.
The piano sequence or when they're crossing the bridge.
It's all equivalent and on the same level as Raiders of the Lost Ark from a standpoint of all that stuff.
And the thing is, though, it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, it's not the same type of story, but from a story perspective, it still works because it might not be as big of an adventure story, but it's, I think, a little bit more simple than Raiders is, but it's still effective, which I think is what works about it. It's also, just in my opinion, just a fun treasure hunting movie.
The story's really good. I think the story's really good, and it's an easy to follow story. You know, it's not deep. You don't have to think too hard. You basically jumping in the kid's backpack and going for a ride.
But you know, the thing is, though, this movie is directed by Richard Donner, probably most famous for directing Superman with Christopher Reeve, but he also directed the Lethal Weapon movies. He directed The Omen, which is a really good horror film. From a directing standpoint, I think that this is probably one of his best films. Do you think it is his best movie?
Probably not, but what I would say, though, is I think there are very few movies that are adventure comedies, and I feel like that's what this movie is. It's like an adventure comedy.
And you know what? Even though, like we said, adventure comedy, it's produced by Spielberg.
Yep.
And the thing is, though, when you watch something, whether he's directing it or producing it, I love how when you watch something, you can tell Spielberg is attached to it because it has his DNA in it, and you can definitely tell that. And that's, I think, what makes Spielberg such a unique filmmaker.
The special effects let you know that it's Spielberg. Really, that's what it is. Is just you watch that and you go, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but now that we're done talking about the Goonies, now we're moving on to arguably one of the maybe top 5 movies of the 1980s. We have Back to the Future, a movie that I truly love. I have always loved this movie, even from the first time I saw it. And the fact that Michael J. Fox is in this movie, I think is kind of a miracle, because when he was approached to do this movie, he was doing Teen Wolf, and to his words, he thought his career was over, but then he got the script for this movie. And Eric Stoltz was originally going to play Marty McFly, but he was eventually let go. And my question is, do you think he would have been as good as Michael J. Fox in this role?
No, absolutely not. Michael J. Fox, he was probably, at the time, he was probably the most well-known, I don't want to call him a child actor, but, or a kid actor, under 20 or, under 25 or whatever. He was probably the best known actor because he had a TV show that he was on before that he was on with Justin Bateman's sister. And what was that called? Family Ties? I think it was called Family Ties. And that was one of the most popular shows in the 80s.
And not just Michael J. Fox, though. This movie in general has a pretty good cast. You got Christopher Lloyd, who's awesome. Him and Michael J. Fox, I think their dynamic is probably maybe the best thing about the movie. The two of them play off each other just so incredibly well. They're like electric together, and that's what I appreciate about it. And Doc Brown, I truly love that character. He's intelligent, he's comedic. At times, he's kind of just very eccentric, too, and that works really well. But you also got Leah Thompson, you got Crispin Glover, you got Tom Wilson as the bumbling idiot Biff, who's also really funny. The cast is really great and everyone does a really good job. And actually, Dad, what's one thing I noticed about Back to the Future? It's a really good sci-fi film. I think it's a movie that actually works pretty well also sort of as a father-son story. Because if you look at when he goes back to the past, when you look at his mom Lorraine and his dad George is the character that I think he spends the most time with of the two of them. And it works pretty well as a father-son story because the roles are almost kind of reversed if you think about it. Because instead of, the dad being the one who's sort of the mentor figure, you got Marty being the one who kind of guides George to stand up for himself. And, while the time machine and getting back to the future is the whole point, it's a movie that I think does work pretty well as a father-son story where you have these two guys who are the same age.
But deep part of the story is, as a kid, he has the story of how his parents met. And when he goes back to find out that his dad was the peeping Tom.
And the kid who got picked on.
And the kid who got picked on and all that weird stuff. And he's like, I can't believe my dad's a dork. He basically has to coach his dad up so that he can hook up with his mom so that he'll actually be alive later.
That's why I think it works really well also as a father-son story too. It's got a unique spin on it, I think, just cool.
It does, and it's a fun story, the fact that his mom's hitting on him. Doesn't know. And then when it gets to the point where she tries to kiss him,
it's like I kissed my brother.
Yeah. And it was so funny leading up the lead up to the movie was so masterfully written and well done.
And the thing about Back to the Future, just like what I mentioned with Raiders, it's a movie that I really like because I really just appreciate the imagination behind it, because it's not a super deep movie by any means, but it's still very inventive. It's definitely a very creative movie, and that's one of the things I've always appreciated about it.
No, definitely. I think it appealed to a lot of people because it was sci-fi, it was comedy, there was a love story, kind of a family film, right?
And it's a time travel story where you don't have to think too much about what's going on because the time travel elements aren't super complicated and everything. It's simpler.
It was entertaining.
No, it was like,
You know.
here's the time machine. It wasn't, oh, we had to build it and we had to do all this stuff. It was like, no, here's the time machine. You know, made it easy. You didn't have to think about it. It was a fun watch. And the sci-fi aspect of it, I feel like it was just on the edge enough that people thought it was plausible too. So it made it kind of fun.
You know what's funny? One thing that's always annoyed me about this movie, though, is the scene where he's getting ready to go back to the future when he's about to race the car after, Doc rips up the letter. He then says, wait, I have a time machine. I can just go back and warn him. How much time does he give himself? 11 minutes. 11 minutes. You have a time machine and you only give yourself 11 minutes. You couldn't give yourself a couple hours or a day or something and then just hide out? You don't think maybe you just need a little bit more time to go back and warn Doc so that he has enough time? You're going to give yourself 11 minutes. Are you kidding me?
No, I agree. I would have definitely given myself more time. Why
Hey.
not like 15?
He's efficient. He thought he could get it done quickly.
Well, here's the thing, though. Once he finally makes it back to 985, the Libyans are literally driving right next to him, heading there, right as he heads back there. 11 minutes. Otherwise, from a filmmaking perspective, from a story perspective, acting, it's something that still holds up. And I think it always will. I think it's a timeless classic.
I agree.
I agree. I think, and one of the funniest scenes out of that is when he falls out of the tree and he's laying on the ground and his mom keeps calling him Calvin because it says Calvin Klein on his underwear.
Yeah.
I just assumed that was your name. I just thought of it and oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But now that we finished talking about Back to the Future, now we have Dad's favorite movie on this entire list. The movie that he considers the greatest movie ever made. Better Off Dead. In his words, the most incredible piece of cinema ever.
It is not the best piece of cinema ever. It is one of the best 80s teen angst movies ever made.
Do you agree, Jenny?
I don't, but I do enjoy the movie.
You have your main character, John Cusack's best role, even though he hates it.
Yeah, that's something, if you guys aren't aware of that, John Cusack pretty much walked out 20 minutes in, and he even confronted the director saying that it was the worst thing that he had ever seen, which, whatever, it's just what it is.
But it's a typical story of guy loses girlfriend, guy is brooding over lost girlfriend, and in the midst of it all, he meets someone else. He goes through a bunch of angsty things that is reality. Some of it is just a bunch of imagination, claymation mixed in with it. But the story is solid. It's just a solid, basically teen angst brooding guy who meets a girl who is dating someone else. Well, not dating someone else, but going through the whole thing. Diane Franklin's character is a foreign exchange student who is hanging out with their neighbors. He meets her, and she basically helps build up his confidence again so he can go back and try to reclaim the woman that he thinks he loves, but then he ends up falling for her in the end.
And the thing is, though, kind of like what I said with Pretty in Pink, it's predictable, but that doesn't automatically mean it's bad.
Some people like predictable because they want to just know that everybody's going to be okay in the end and watch it. It's hilarious. Kid on the bike chasing him around trying to get his
$2.
I want my $2. He has a piece of crap car he's driving around. He's got a 68 Camaro sitting in his front yard that Diane Franklin helps him put back together so that he can build his confidence back up again.
And the thing about the movie is, if you think about it, most of the plot is mainly Lane kind of just getting treated like shit for an hour and a half. And I guess that's kind of part of the joke. And when I was younger, I had a lot of issues with this movie. And I don't know if you guys can confirm this or not, but one thing I've heard from people who were around in the 80s is, look, we know that the movie's stupid, but that's what makes it great.
Right.
It's acceptance. You accept it for what it is. You went in, you watched this movie, you killed the hour and a half, you laughed, you had a good time, you went home.
And the thing about this movie, as I've gotten older, I guess I respect its attitude. It's kind of just don't give a shit attitude. It does not care how random it is. It doesn't care how wacky it is or how nonsensical it is. It just does whatever the hell it wants. It has an entire sequence at a burger joint where the movie turns into a music video.
For a claymation music video.
Right.
Yes, claymation
Horrible.
music video.
But the dark humor,
Yeah, he tried to kill himself in the garage.
He tries to do that multiple
multiple
times.
times.
Yeah,
That's kind of the
that's the
plot of
whole
the movie,
That's
yeah.
the whole movie is that his girlfriend left. He keeps trying to do it, and every time he tries to do it, something happens where he doesn't die.
He can't race.
Oh, the Howard Cosell guy. See, you don't know who that is. Howard Cosell was a
Right.
popular sportscaster that did Monday Night Football in the 70s. And he was the voice of football in the 70s. So you didn't have to put his face on the screen. You put his voice out, everybody knew who he was. So when the guys pull up and go, Lane Meyer, and they do it in the Howard Cosell voice, everybody knows who it is. That's the problem with that, is that like someone who's our age that went through it and we know who he is, it's no big deal. You laugh. You're like, oh my gosh, a guy sounds like Howard Cosell. You're going, who the hell's that? Who are these goofy guys with the stupid voice? And then finally gets his car and smokes him in the end, builds his confidence up, goes up, skis the mountain. He's basically tackling all of his demons during the course of the movie. So it's a story of winning after losing for the whole movie.
Here's a question though: does it still hold up?
You could make this work.
I don't know.
I think you can make it work. Brooding teen angst never goes away. I think you can update it and still do it. You can still ski down a mountain. A guy can still lose his girlfriend.
Snort Jello.
No, he snorted snow. Oh, he snorted Jello, and then he snorted snow. Remember, I snorted the snow. And the problem is that guy, his friend, the guy with the scruffy beard that's probably 35, playing an 18-year-old. He was sidekick guy for comedies in the 80s. He was in Risky Business. He was Tom Cruise's best friend in Risky Business. He was Booger in Revenge of the Nerds. And everybody who knows what Revenge of the Nerds is knows who Booger is. So and then he's in this movie as Lane Meyer's best friend. It's just, he was like the ultimate sidekick best friend.
Well, now that we're done talking about Better Off Dead, now we're going to 1986 when we're going to be talking about Top Gun.
Fly into the danger zone.
For you guys personally, have you ever been big Tom Cruise fans?
Then I was. Everyone was.
Every girl thought Tom Cruise was the hottest dude.
No, but guys loved him too. I think everyone loved Tom Cruise at one point.
No, in this movie, it was the cast. You had Tom Cruise, you had Anthony Edwards, you had Val Kilmer. It was all the guys that women thought were hot in the 80s were all in this movie.
Yes.
They were all in this movie.
Eye candy.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, everyone thought Kelly McGillis. Guys probably thought Kelly McGillis was good looking. Tom Skerritt was great in this movie. I forget his call now. I think he was Viper. Was he Viper in that? I think that was his. But that movie was really good. It was fun. That was, I hate this. That's where I go. Sign of the Times. It was 80s excess. Tom playing this brash military pilot whose father had issues that are classified that he doesn't know about, and it's a mystery through the whole movie while he is trying to basically, and in the whole thing, while he's in flight school, he's working with his best friend who's with him.
Goose.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards playing Goose. In the middle of that, he meets a woman who he finds out actually is superior to him in the service. He's got an adversarial relationship with Val Kilmer's character. Val doesn't respect him, and he's fighting for respect along with all that. There's just so much good going on in this movie. It's a really good look at the intertwinings of people's relationships and how people work together. It's not even about the military aspect.
It's really more about their personal lives, I think, than it is about the military side.
Yeah, that just happens to be their job.
And quite honestly, when it comes to Maverick's relationships in this movie, you have his relationship with Charlie. But the weird thing is that I actually like his dynamic with Goose a lot better. I just think they played off each other a little bit more. I think he and Charlie were good together. That was fine. But Goose, they felt a lot more electric together, so that's what I appreciated about it. And I thought that Goose's death was actually a genuinely sad moment in the movie.
I agree. I definitely agree. And I feel like that would be true, right? When you're serving together, you have more of a relationship with your partner because you're relying on them, right? You're keeping each other alive. Their characters may have been closer, right?
Well, and back when this movie came out, for you guys personally, did you ever picture Tom Cruise as an action star?
What came out? What was the movie? Color of Money, Cocktail.
I think that was like his coming out because he was in what the heck
Risky Business.
He was in Risky Business before that.
The Outsiders?
Oh,
Yes,
The Outsiders.
The Outsiders. That's what I was thinking.
Actually, that is a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Cruise was in The Outsiders, but Risky Business was his big starting out movie, and I think Top Gun put him with those guys, Val Kilmer, Anthony Edwards. I don't know if he was on the same tier as those two guys then, but but Top Gun was the movie that propelled Tom Cruise from good actor to superstar.
Yeah, because if you look at the career that he had after that, especially with the action genre, I mean, you got the Mission Impossible franchise, Minority Report,
Good movie.
Edge of Tomorrow.
My favorite Tom Cruise role is Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder.
Yes, I'm very aware of that.
That's his best role that he's ever done. He was made to look like a big, fat, gross old man with huge hands, and it's hilarious.
But now that we're done talking about Top Gun, now we are moving on to 1987, where we're going to be talking about Less Than Zero, a movie that I had never seen until recently. And I gotta say, I was actually pretty impressed with this movie. I liked the acting in it. I think Robert Downey Jr. especially was really great in this movie. I think it definitely had a really good emotional weight to it. Yeah, overall, I think it's definitely a good film.
It was kind of raw. It showcased the reality of wealthy, jaded,
Fresh out of college.
right, with too much money to spend, and just the excess of that time period.
The 80s excess. And it was a quintessential Brat Pack movie. It had all the Brat Pack people just about in it. I mean, when you look at it, it was...
James Spader's in it too.
James
Yeah.
Spader, Robert Downey Jr.,
Andrew McCarthy.
Andrew
Yeah.
McCarthy, Jamie Gertz, but it was so gritty and raw, and it was a tragic tale of friends.
And the thing is, when I was watching it, I kind of figured from pretty early on that Julian wasn't going to survive. And that scene where he goes to see his dad and, they hug and he tells him, if you can just stay clean for a week. Right there, I was pretty much sure that he wasn't going to make it. It just seems like that type of moment. But I think that scene itself, even though it's pretty clear what was eventually going to happen, it's still a really great scene in itself. So that's what I liked about it. And here's one thing that I don't understand. Why do you think so many people didn't like this movie even back then?
Because it was gritty and raw.
I think also it portrayed self-indulgence and moral decay and things that people didn't want to talk about. Look at that compared to a 16 Candles or a Pretty in Pink. This showcased the
worst in people and worst that can happen.
Right. And the loss of innocence too.
You know what? That's actually a great point. The loss of innocence is probably the best one-line explanation of this.
Because Julian, as a character, does feel pretty innocent at the beginning, but then you really see his downfall just in 6 months.
He was a lost soul.
Yeah, he was a lost soul.
Because it's that crazy kind of lifestyle where these kids just had no parental control. They were just given money and figure it out and do, that's why their whole life was a mess. They had no moral code. Like they were just kind of off spending money on drugs and partying. And so I think people who didn't have that lifestyle couldn't relate. But then I think it struck a nerve with people who did live that lifestyle.
Well, and I think with that, because the movie doesn't have a happy ending by any means, that doesn't really make the movie worse. It makes the movie more interesting.
And the ending, the snapshot of them, right, at graduation, going full circle.
And the thing is, not every movie needs to have a happy ending.
I agree.
I think even if you have a sad ending can still be effective.
The whole movie, you felt that weight, or I did. You're just waiting for the next thing to happen.
Yeah, and you had Jamie Gertz who was kind of in denial about what was happening to him. She was like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay." She was momming him,
Even though you could tell she knew it wasn't gonna be okay in the end.
Yes, and she also was kind of hiding it from Andrew McCarthy. Think that he's not as bad as he is. Oh, he just had a rough night. He'll be okay.
And I'm actually shocked that Downey didn't even get nominated for this movie, actually.
You know what? I think in its time, you'd have to look at other movies that were going against it in 87. That's probably why, because I think that was when Lethal Weapon and all that stuff was coming out. And so this movie's going to get buried.
It wasn't a feel-good movie.
Yeah, I think that's part of why people didn't like it was the subject matter.
And unfortunately, you can't please everybody. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who really don't like Terminator. There are people out there who don't like Raiders, who don't like Scarface, who don't like Back to the Future.
And for others, people are going to the movies, they want to escape. They want to have feel-good things. There were really no feel-good moments in this movie. It was more of a movie that you would reflect on versus walk out laughing. You left that movie feeling down.
Now time to move on to the final movie on our list. Now we're going to 1988, where we have arguably one of the greatest movies ever made, and that is going to be Die Hard. This is such an incredible film. This movie just has everything. It's a great action film. It's comedic. It's dramatic. It's so many things. It's got great acting. The script's awesome. The action sequences are so incredibly well done. The set design is really great. This is probably one of, if not my favorite 1980s film.
For the time, absolutely. Again, for the time, great movie. Bruce Willis had just he hadn't been a feature movie artist as of yet. He was more of a television actor before this. And this was kind of like his coming out party as far as being a full-fledged leading man actor.
I think it had a great hero-villain dynamic.
And yes, it's a Christmas movie.
Yes,
It is.
It is absolutely a Christmas movie.
The three of us agree on that for sure.
I mean, think about this. It's a guy trying to reunite with his family during Christmas time. He has to get through certain obstacles to finally get back to his wife and his family, and those obstacles just happen to be terrorists. It's a Christmas movie with explosions and
Right,
machine guns.
with terrorism.
That's just how it is. It's definitely a movie that I always watch during Christmas time. And you know what's great? When you have a character like John McClane, one of the things that's great about him as an action hero, he's not kind of like what I was saying about Ripley in Aliens. He's not indestructible. Because if you look at this movie, McClane kind of gets the shit kicked out of him for most of the movie. He's not always getting the upper hand against the terrorists that he's fighting, especially when he's fighting Carl. But the thing is, that's what makes him more appealing. And also, I would say he's actually pretty scared for most of the movie. You know, he's not sure if he can get through this. You know what's one of the best things about John McClane? He talks to himself a lot. You know, he's going, John, come on, think, use your head. Or he's like, why didn't you stop them, John? Because then you'd be dead too, asshole. I mean, it's kind of relatable because I'm sure that's what a lot of people would be doing in this situation. But he's also just funny as hell, you know, when he throws the body out the window, he goes, welcome to the party, pal. And Bruce Willis just perfectly plays John McClane. Kind of like what I was saying about someone like Harrison Ford and Al Pacino. He has a presence that makes him very rootable in this movie, which is what I like. And I think originally they had approached Mel Gibson to play John McClane, which I think Mel Gibson's a great actor, but I don't know if he would have been as effective as Bruce Willis, to be honest.
Bruce Willis has a every guy kind of allure to him that those other guys don't.
And I think that's part of what makes John McClane better as a character, because he himself is an everyday guy, and that's what's appealing about him.
He's not buff. He has receding hairline. He's chain smoking cigarettes the whole time. He's doing it while he's cracking all the one-liners. Like you said, he's like your every guy hero.
But apart from John McClane, you also have Hans Gruber, arguably one of the best villains ever in the history of cinema. And he's perfectly played by Alan Rickman. And I think part of what makes Hans Gruber really great is that he's a villain who actually has, you know, he's not a mustache twirling villain in my opinion. When he's just in the elevator and he says to him, nice suit, I have two myself. I mean, he's just such an awesome villain. And in the end, you know, his whole plan, you know, when they say, what kind of terrorists are you? He says, who said we were terrorists? I mean, he just wants the money. It's a simple motivation for a villain, but it's still effective. And the reason why is because he's an effective character. You know, he's played incredibly well. He's written incredibly well.
Yeah, I think everyone's really good because we're also forgetting
Al.
You know,
Hilarious.
good old Al, who's, you know, is trying to help John the whole time as well from the ground.
And you know what's funny? He's a side character who actually gets really good characterization in this movie. You know, there's a point in the movie where you find out, you know, he had an accident, that he shot a kid who he thought was holding a real gun.
His wife is pregnant and he's waiting for her basically to have the baby like right now.
When he's going to get the Twinkies and
Yeah.
everything. Or even, I think Holly's written pretty well in this movie. I mean, she doesn't get a whole lot to do, but what I like, though, is that she's not afraid to stand up to Hans Gruber. You know, everyone starts looking to her for after they kill Mr. Takagi, and she says to him, you know, everyone's looking to me now. She says, you know, we need bathroom runs. In terms of the action, she doesn't get a whole lot to do, but I think she's written pretty well.
Absolutely.
But also you got Argyle, the limo driver, and he's a really fun character. You know, when he's just sitting in the limo downstairs with the stuffed bear, just chilling, he's a really fun character. Or even some of the other terrorists, Carl, you know, who's kind of Hans's kind of right hand, the muscle of the group. Or you got Leo, the tech guy.
How about the dipshit who was trying to negotiate with John and
Yeah.
with the guy with the beard? And he's like, and he's looking at Hans and he's like, I got this. And John's like, don't. You're
Well, and also, I think this is something kind of similar to a movie like Speed or Alien. You're trapped inside this environment, like how in Speed you're trapped inside a bus. In this, you're trapped inside the building, and it can feel very claustrophobic, but I think that's part of what makes it immersive.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Because it almost feels, I've said this about other movies, it feels as if you're trapped inside here with them. And
Yeah, in your own little world.
actually, Dad, here's a question. When you look at this movie and compare it to another action film from the 80s like Escape from New York, what do you think that this movie does better?
Probably it's tough because it's completely different kind of movie. Because in this one, you basically just kind of follow John through the whole movie. Escape from New York, it isn't just Snake against the Duke. It's all the guys and in the whole group against, you know, as you know, Snake's little ragtag to go help. You know, John's doing it as a solo act. You know, I mean, Al is helping him, but he's doing it from the ground. He's not doing it as in.
The only thing that I've actually never really enjoyed about this movie is that that whole subplot with reporter Thornburg, how he's kind of just going around trying to get the story on everything. Because the thing is, it feels like the whole point of that whole subplot was to get to the moment where John and Holly's kids show up on the news and they say, come home. And then, Hans realizes that she's actually John's wife. I really think that could have just shown up on the news. I don't think we really needed a subplot to lead to that.
No, but those investigative reporters were popular in the 80s because world information wasn't as easily accessible as it is now. Those people were basically the internet. Those investigative reporters were how you got your information about subjects like that.
What about you, Jenny?
I agree. It almost ruined it. Like, there was too much.
Well, the thing about it is, I think you could just remove it from the movie and it wouldn't affect anything. It could have just been, he sees them on the news and
That's what I mean. Like, it would have been more shock value, right?
But despite that, that doesn't ruin the movie by any means. This movie is still awesome. What about it do you think still holds up?
I don't know, because my struggle with the hold up part of it is the advancement in technology.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it holds up so well, I think this is the case with a lot of movies, it's quotable.
Oh, absolutely.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs. Now I know what a TV dinner feels like, or probably the biggest line in the movie. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Which is a line that Bruce Willis and one of the producers had to have a very serious conversation about, because originally it was either going to be that or yippee-ki-yay. I don't really think that would have been as memorable as yippee-ki-yay. I don't even know what that really means, actually.
No, neither. I've never heard it.
Well, didn't they call him Roy Rogers?
Yeah.
I think Roy Rogers' tag is yippee-ki-yay.
Yeah, but yippee. I don't even know. Yeah.
Well, with all that being said, to close this off, I just wanted to go back through the list and just let our listeners know just what our personal favorites are from the list. Jenny, of all the movies we've talked about, are any of these your personal favorites?
I would say Less Than Zero and 16 Candles.
Top two for me on this list, Escape from New York and Better Off Dead.
Top two for me would probably have to be Die Hard and Back to the Future. I think those movies would probably have to be in my top 10, I think, of all time. All right, well, I think that's the end of this discussion. Dad, Jenny, thank you so much for joining me for this.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you all again next time.